Great. Now, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Happy to have with us Courtney Van Bussum and Dr. Nasha Winters. Want to do a little quick housekeeping before we get started. We do have the chat feature open, so if there's anything that you want to just comment on, please feel free to use the chat to do that. We also have a Q&A feature, and so if you have specific questions for Courtney, we can house those in that space, and then after she's done with her presentation, she can answer those questions for you. At the end, we'll also have an opportunity for you if you want to actually verbally ask a question of Courtney. We'll have an opportunity for you to raise your hand, and then I'll take you off mute so you can do that as well. So I want to welcome you all. This is a series of presentations that we're doing in conjunction with our Metabolic Health Day conference, and we're happy to have KenetikPro and Longevity Launch Labs with us as a sponsor. They're going to be with us sponsoring our community day and as a part of the whole conference overall. And so we're excited to share them and their knowledge with you today. And if you're attending the conference in person, you'll get to meet them. And if you're attending virtually, you'll get to learn more about them in our event platform. But this information will be available after the webinar is over. We will make it available to all of you and anyone who's registered that can't make it with us, and we'll make it available publicly. We really want to just make sure that we highlight these great partnerships we have and all the wonderful work that they're doing to improve metabolic health for all. So again, thank you for being here. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Nasha.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much. And by the way, everybody, if you don't know Lynn Hughes at this point, you need to. This is our Swiss Army knife of Metabolic Training Institute of Health. She is the heavy lifter behind this amazing event we are hosting in Tucson and online. And so, Lynn, I just want to bow down to you in all this. You've been creating these beautiful webinars and bringing these incredible sponsors and voices to the forefront. So thank you so much for that. But wonderful. And on that note, I can't wait for this conversation. I have been learning a little bit more about the KenetikPro line. We've known the Kenetik family for some time now, but they've moved into more of a clinical line. And we are going to get to hear from Courtney Van Bussum today. And so as we continue exploring the future of metabolic health, I'm really thrilled to introduce someone who is truly at the forefront of translating the science of, ketone bodies into practice. Courtney Van Bussum is the COO and co-founder of Longevity Launch Labs, where she's helped accelerate innovation in cellular and longevity medicine. With a background in biomedical engineering and hands-on experience running clinical operations, she bridges the gap between discovery and delivery, ensuring that cutting-edge science reaches the people who need it most. Today, Courtney will be sharing with us one of the most promising tools in the metabolic health toolbox, ketones. Many of you are already familiar with ketones and ketosis as a natural metabolic state, but what Courtney and her team have been working on takes this concept to an entirely new level. Through KenetikPro, the first medical-grade ketone product designed specifically for clinical use, they are helping physicians and patients alike harness ketones, not just as an energy source, but as a powerful signaling molecule that enhances mitochondrial resilience, regulates inflammation, and supports cellular repair. So we are going to hear on how these high-dose bioidentical ketones are being safely and effectively integrated into clinical practice and opening up new therapeutic pathways for conditions ranging from metabolic dysfunction to neurologic recovery. So thank you and welcome, Courtney Van Bussum. We are very much looking forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you, Dr. Winters. I appreciate that bio. That made us sound real important and fancy. So, but no, I'm really appreciative to be here and really excited to share with you guys a little bit more about KenetikPro, and ketones. A good chunk of this presentation is really diving into the science of ketones to understand why they're such a cool molecule, and then to understand why at higher doses they can really be powerful for clinical use, for clinical applications. And as Lynn said, we will be in Tucson next week, my team and I. So hopefully if you are going to be there, swing by. We'll be sampling KenetikPro. We'll be testing ketone levels. So it'll be fun. All right, I will dive in. Dr. Winters gave us a good background. Longevity Launch Labs is our parent company that we help bring these novel cellular medicine focused products, technologies to the clinical market. So we partnered with Kenetik to bring a pro line to be more available to practitioners and patients for those higher therapeutic uses. All right, ketones. So ketones are your cell's ultimate energy molecule, and I will tell you why. But first, let's start at the basics. So I'm going to do a little bit of a bio 101 to ground us, because when you understand what's happening inside the cell, all of the applications that I'll talk about later on make a lot more sense. So bear with me as we go into the bio. But at its simplest, a ketone is a carbon molecule joined to an oxygen molecule with a double bond. Ketones are naturally produced by the liver, primarily from fatty acids, when carbohydrate availability is low. Hence, right, the keto diet is a low-carb diet because our bodies are super smart and designed a backup way to get energy when there's not enough glucose, when there's not enough carbs available. And by definition, therefore, they are an alternative, but also an efficient fuel source. So I'll talk a lot about that efficiency component in a little bit. But for both the brain, the body, the muscles, they can get into all of your different tissue, energy-hungry different tissues. There's three main types: beta-hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate, and acetone. And BHB, that beta-hydroxybutyrate, is typically what you're going to see most often talked about. It's the most abundant, it's the most stable, and so therefore it's the more therapeutically relevant when we are talking about the clinical use. And so to understand ketones, you also have to understand this idea of cellular redox, right? We're talking about metabolic health, we're talking about cellular metabolism. And so ketones are this important redox molecule. And so redox stands for reduction and oxidation. And it's really your cell's ability to pass electrons down this electron transport chain. And that's what makes ATP. And if you remember, ATP is our body's, energy currency. And so really every single cell in your body depends on this constant electron transfer to make energy. And then it defends against stress and keeps the system in balance. When I do other lectures or talks, I talk a ton about cellular homeostasis because our cells are really, really intelligent. And so they've designed all these systems to stay in balance. And so when we fall out of balance, that's when we see issues. So to take that a little bit further, inside of this electron transport chain, there's actually 4 steps, or 4 complexes as we call them. And the electron transport chain, it's happening inside of the inner mitochondrial membrane. And that's where the electrons are getting passed to make ATP. But there's this other cycle happening in the mitochondrial matrix called the Krebs cycle. And this is what's feeding that electron transport chain. So the Krebs cycle is important because it generates these 2 molecules, amongst other things, but generates what's called NADH and FADH2. And that H is important because it means they're a reduced form. And so they carry and then donate their electrons to the electron transport chain. So they kick those electrons into the chain to make energy. So think of it like the Krebs cycle is what's prepping a loading dock for your electrons, and then they're cashing in for ATP inside of that chain. So this is important because this is where everything kind of is at the core. So inside of this cycle, inside of these systems, the ketones are actually following an alternative pathway. So compared to glucose, right, which our cells are sort of most familiar with, typical glucose metabolism looks like glucose goes through this process called glycolysis. Glycolysis creates pyruvate, pyruvate to acetyl-CoA, enters that Krebs cycle we just talked about, and you get this high NADH production. And so NADH, if we go back a step, you can see here, it enters at complex 1. And so it's kind of in that very first step. And then what happens is if something happens to our complex 1 and it becomes dysfunctional, you'll get this traffic jam, right? So NADH can't efficiently transfer its electrons and you reduce your ATP production. Now let's compare that to ketones. So ketones, they get into acetyl-CoA and to the Krebs cycle. But what's really unique is that they generate more of that FADH2 relative to NADH compared to glucose. So again, I'll go back a step here. FADH2 is entering at that complex 2. So this is critical because it actually has more of this molecule and it bypasses complex 1. So it's completely downstream of any glycolytic bottlenecking that could occur when you get complex 1 dysfunction. And so you're like, okay, why does this all matter? Well, where does complex 1 dysfunction come in? Complex 1 dysfunction is what happens when our cells get older. It's simply when we age, our mitochondria aren't working as well. Or neurodegenerative diseases, mitochondrial disorders, post-COVID. We're in a post-COVID world. Everybody's mitochondria are a little jacked up. And then metabolic dysfunction across the board. So when we have this complex 1 dysfunction, then by being able to bypass it, we have this more efficient energy source. And so that's why you hear ketones talked a lot about as being efficient. First off, they enter the Krebs cycle via that acetyl-CoA, and they bypass glycolysis or any pyruvate bottlenecks. And then also what's really cool about this is that because of that process, they create what's called less leakage in our electron transport chain. So when we go back here again, every time we go through one of these steps, we kick out some electrons that then can turn into what are those reactive oxygen species, or those ROSs. And that's that leakage. So when we skip a step, we actually have less leakage. So we have more clean burning fuel, you'll hear it talked about as. And this in turn makes this higher oxygen efficiency. So more ATP per oxygen molecule consumed versus glucose or fats. So in other words, ketones skip glycolysis, they burn cleaner, and they give you more ATP for the oxygen you breathe. Net effect, more energy per oxygen, less oxidative stress. So this is really important, right? I know I got deep into the cellular mechanics of it, but that's really why ketones are so cool, in my opinion. And this graph here is just showing the creation, that ketogenesis that's happening often in the liver, and then the usage of those ketones. And then there's this other thing that I think gets missed a lot in the ketone conversation, but is arguably just as, if not more important than the efficiency, is their ability to act as signaling molecules. So if you look at this picture over here, you see that there's a bunch of different pathways getting influenced by that BHB ketone body. And anytime you have sort of a pleiotropic multifactorial effect in the system, it means that it's working better. And so amongst many other things, but ketones actually can activate what's called PGC1 alpha, and that can drive mitochondrial biogenesis, both the quantity and the quality of them. And what's something that I didn't really have a full appreciation for until I got deeper into this cellular mechanics side is, think about in a typical mitochondria that's working really hard to keep up with the demands of the energy of the body. It's going to do whatever it can, and it never gets a break, right? It's going to keep working really hard and make as much energy as possible. But when we give ketones to that mitochondria, it will actually relieve the mitochondria and give it more opportunity to repair. So not only is it signaling to make more mitochondria, but it's helping give your mitochondria a break so that they can, get healthier, get stronger, or potentially clear out the bad mitophagy, clear out the bad mitochondria. Another pathway that it works on is called NRF2. And this is what helps enhance your antioxidant defenses. So it upregulates superoxide dismutase, catalase. And then there's this aspect of ketones that's actually influencing epigenetics. So it inhibits histone deacetylases, which is promoting beneficial gene expression. So it's actually helping keep your DNA strong and reduce damage to your DNA. So across all of these different pathways, you're helping to trigger anti-inflammation, and you're helping to keep that cell working, humming along, keep it in homeostasis. And so this is why I like to say that ketones are the foundation of metabolic therapeutics, because they're actually working at this core level to optimize your energy systems, optimize your mitochondria. They're signaling for anti-inflammation, antioxidant support, and they also have these cool delivery advantages where they cross the blood-brain barrier and they don't require insulin for uptake. So that's why ketones are cool, but why do they matter clinically? Ketones have a long history of actually first being used in the athletic space, right? They got known, especially in the biking community. If you guys have interacted with our kinetic drinks, you'll see us at a lot of biking events because they spare glycogen. Ketones are helping to skip that glycolysis. They reduce oxidative stress, and this leads to faster repair, improved physical performance. But again, this is a core cellular mechanism, so it's going to extend beyond just athletic performance or recovery. So think of ketones like that premium fuel source, right? You have regular gas and then you have premium gas. The premium gas is more efficient. It's cleaner burning. And so ketones serve this efficient energy source to support the brain and body, to support your mitochondria, and to protect that cell. Again, that fewer reactive oxygen species. So you get less cellular stress, reduced damage. And in turn, we influence all of these important aspects of our system. So there's this faceted bioenergetic pleiotropic effect of ketone bodies. And what I like to call out here in this study, and we'll talk a little bit more about what these values mean at the end, but this study looked at effects at just greater than or equal to 0.5 millimolar per liter. So you do have to have enough ketone bodies on board to start to influence some of these organ systems. And we'll get into what those different levels mean at the end. So we're talking about metabolic health, right? I'll be at the Metabolic Health Day next week. So I wanted to focus a bit more on the metabolic applications, but really we're talking cellular metabolism, and that extends beyond, just one system or one aspect. And it's kind of the core of energy regulation. But to take it a layer deeper, ketones actually can help with appetite hormones. So they modulate hunger signals to support satiety and appetite control. It's why I go to these conferences and I'll just be chugging ketones all day and not have time to eat, but it's okay because I've got enough ketones on board. But they also provide this stable brain fuel so that you have a steady energy source. You don't have that crashing that might occur with like a glucose energy. And then they also help improve your nutrient sensing pathways. So there's these key pathways like AMPK, mTOR, SIRT1, and by helping make them more sensitive, helping to modulate them correctly, you can support the cell, and this has also been linked to reduced calorie intake. So that's kind of on the appetite side. And then that would extend into this glucose management. So trying to keep our blood sugar levels, right, keep our glucose managed so that we're not spiking up and down is going to help keep the cell in that stability homeostatic state. So ketones can help reduce the liver glucose production, so they can decrease gluconeogenesis. That helps promote steadier blood sugar, fewer energy swings, and in turn improves our sensitivity to insulin. So we're less reliant on glycolysis. We have a lower insulin demand, so we have healthier signaling. And then by having both of these energy systems available, we can improve metabolic flexibility. I think this term has become more and more popular and well known, but it's our ability to shift between glucose and ketones as fuel. And so having a cell that's able to use the right fuel source at the right time for the right purpose is going to really help that optimization. And this all in turn leads to better inflammatory control. So some of those pathways that ketones influence are directly related to inflammation. Ketones can help block the NLRP3 inflammasome. They can, as I said, act as a HDAC inhibitor, which can also improve antioxidant defenses. And then it helps make those resilient mitochondria, like we spoke about, by also enhancing NAD+ and sirtuin activity. And all of this, in turn, helps to protect the cell from damage during metabolic stress and reduce those reactive oxygen species. So now where do we go with ketones even further beyond metabolic health? Again, I think everything kind of has a core metabolic aspect to it, but I'll highlight some of the other clinical applications where ketones and high-dose ketones can be really helpful. So I think people know ketones for cognition or focus as one of the main reasons that they're interested in them. But the why are they so cool for the brain? Well, as I mentioned, they cross the blood-brain barrier via this MCT transporter. So they serve as an alternative brain fuel than glucose. But what's unique is in that second sentence, brain ketone uptake remains robust in aging and mild cognitive impairment. So what does this mean? Well, as we get older, or if we have a damaged brain, our ability to use glucose for energy may become dysfunctional, and you will not be able to be as efficient with that glucose energy, or you may be dysregulated in that energy usage. But we've found, studies have shown that brain ketone uptake remains robust even when you age. So if you don't have proper energy elsewise, the brain can then start to leverage those ketone bodies. And this helps tissues work with that less energy wasted as well compared to glucose. And then there's also some interesting research showing that it helps with neuroplasticity, increased brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is linked to neural adaptability and memory. And so to go beyond just the cognition side, what is this doing to heal the brain or help support brain and neurological disease or neurological health? Well, it's providing that stable energy source when glucose is low. And what that does is it supports neuronal survival and function when it's under a stress system. You also see neurotransmitter balance, so you can enhance GABA production, which is that calming neurotransmitter, and then you can rebalance the GABA to glutamate ratio, which improves neural stability. And then all of this can support reduced brain inflammation, but it also directly works by modulating the microglial activation. So when you get that hyperactive microglial is when you can see some of that brain inflammation. And this protects your neurons from oxidative stress and from that excitotoxicity. And then I put this in here because I was just at a COVID conference and I wanted to call out, we're in this post-COVID world and we're in this post-virus world, and our mitochondria are struggling. So anything we can do to support them, but we see, this post-virus fatigue, we see this post-virus brain fog, inflammation, all of that is, if we can heal the mitochondria, we can support improving in those different areas. And this isn't just COVID, this is any virus, right? We see a lot of reactivation of viruses beyond just COVID when you're in an inflamed system. And so all of this is why ketones are really important for healthy aging. It's not, only diseases, it's not only fixing broken things, it's keeping us moving in just the day-to-day as the world is kind of fighting against us, and keeping ourselves healthy, keeping that cell functioning properly, and keeping that inflammation down. And I have a bunch of research, and so if you guys want to need anything specifically, let me know. So now we'll dive into a little bit of how do you get the ketones, right? Now we understand what they do, why they work, where can you access them, how are they used, and what are the different types. First, you need to understand there's two types of ketones. Well, let me re-say that. You can get ketones in two different ways. There's endogenous and exogenous ketones. So endogenous is what you get when you eat, right? That's what you're getting when you're in a low carb state, when you have low glucose availability, lower insulin. Your body turns to its fat cells and says, hey, give me some free fatty acids, and then I can convert those into that BHB. Exogenous is outside in, right? So that's when we take something supplemental and then we can get sort of the similar effect of that endogenous. Inside of the exogenous ketone world, there's two molecules that we talk about that have different roles. So the first, and you see it here, this is the 1,3-butanediol. And this is actually a precursor molecule. So you can take it exogenously and it tells your liver, hey, liver, go make some BHB, go make some ketones. So it's helping to kind of give that natural extended state. But you can also supplement with the BHB directly. So that's going to come on board and help you raise that BHB ketone body level immediately. So together, you actually can get a jump and then a tail. And this is important because when you start to see what else is out there in the market, people have different formulations. So what are those different formats? Ketone salts is kind of the start of the exogenous ketone world. We learned that we could take a BHB molecule, bind it to a mineral, and that would help raise that, keep it stable and raise that blood BHB. The problem with that is that when we have that mineral, that salt on board, you can start to disrupt the pH, cause GI distress, especially when you're trying to take high doses of it. The opposite of that is the ketone alcohols. So that's just that precursor molecule. That's just that 1,3-butanediol that converts in the liver to BHB. So instead of having just a jump, now you have just a tail. So without that BHB ketone molecule, it's difficult to get into high levels because it's just your body's own natural ability to keep up and create the BHB. So then we figured out that we can actually combine those two molecules with a synthetic ester bond, so ester bond to keep them together, and that held it stable. But when you consume that ester, it's actually breaking apart in your gut anyway, and you're using those two different molecules for different purposes. And the ester bond also is what contributes to that harsh taste. If you've tried other ketones out there that taste kind of really bitter, it's because of that ester bond. Interestingly, not only does this impact compliance, people don't keep up with it, but sometimes you can even raise your cortisol levels with the taste of that, and that will then increase insulin and blunt the ketone effect itself. Plus, you need to get high volumes to get therapeutic levels, and they're typically pretty expensive because it's hard to make that ester bond. So bioidentical ketones, KenetikPro. Part of what our secret sauce is that we figured out how to keep these two molecules free and available, but didn't have to do it with the ester bond. And this allows us to then have this high dose and better tasting ketone product. So in KenetikPro, we have 20 grams per ounce of ketones. And so you can have convenient and accessible therapeutic level dosing. You don't have to take a whole bunch of it to get to that high dose. It also has a much improved flavor because of we didn't have to have the ester bond. And then we only then have to use these natural sweeteners, real fruit, to help balance out that flavor profile. And so you don't see the same GI upset as you would. So these are what you have to look for when you're comparing products out there. What are the active components? Do you have that immediate and sustained effect? Taste, tolerance, compliance, and then how much does it cost to produce? And therefore, what's that mean for the consumer? And I'll say, like, for example, it's much cheaper to make 1,3-butanediol than it is to make BHB, which is why if you only have the precursor, a lot of times those are going to be cheaper products. So what is KenetikPro? KenetikPro is bioidentical ketones. And we say bioidentical because that's nature's blueprint. Those two molecules are available in your body separately, and your body's going to use them, one for the liver, one for all the other tissues, and some for the liver. But we designed it specifically for clinical use to have both that bump and that tail. And that higher ketone concentration allows us to get more of that deep therapeutic impact, all of those clinical applications that we talked about. The better taste helps us keep people on it, improved compliance, and then that helps keep the sustained effect of the influential, improvements, health improvements, things that the ketones are working at the cell to fix. And we can do it with real fruit extracts and natural sweeteners. And so when you are starting to understand ketone metabolism, it's helpful to measure your ketone levels just to see, when to supplement with exogenous ketones and what they're doing in your body. So we'll test these, and if you're there next week, we'll be doing testing. But these are the ranges that we typically look for as reference ranges. So if you start to get above that 0.5 millimolar per liter, and that's that BHB reading, we call that light nutritional ketosis. This is a good starting point for getting that weight loss, that metabolic support. Higher nutritional ketosis is where we're really feeling that mental clarity and getting that true, metabolic health. That's going to be that 1 to 3 range. Therapeutic is kind of looking above 3. And we don't recommend staying above that for extended amounts of time unless you're working with a medical supervisor, but it's not a bad thing to pop up into a higher range once in a while to kind of, again, keep and improve that metabolic flexibility. And then clinical ketosis is really that 5 to 8 range. That's that deep fasting, and it's not really needed for most people unless you're using it for a very specific purpose with medical supervision. This is how we typically recommend dosing. One of the things that I've seen historically is that ketones are just very underdosed because you need a lot of them to get that therapeutic application. So we recommend for people who are working with a severe neurological disease like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, trying to get about 80 grams per day. Not all at once, but then staggered throughout the day. That repair situation of more, starting to have cognitive decline is 40 grams per day. And then maintenance and prevention, we recommend 20. Again, this is working with your, you or your client's budget goals. There's a lot of flexibility in how to dose and really finding what works for you at the right times. And these are other little usage guidance that I give. One, if you are using it for that clinical application, you want ketones on board continuously. So dosing at 10 to 20 gram doses 2 to 4 times daily throughout the day. I don't recommend going and chugging 80 grams. We have had, our team has tested it and drinking 80 grams across a 30-minute time period, and we were fine, but it's not the recommended way to just jump up really high because that's not going to give you the sustained effect. If you're looking for performance specifically, using a small dose before training and then a larger dose to support recovery. And then you can do it fasted or eating. Obviously, if you're fasted or in ketosis, you're going to have an enhanced level when you add in the exogenous ketones. If you just ate a bunch of carbohydrates, it's going to blunt the effect. But you're going to get it working. It's going to be that alternative energy source without dietary ketosis. It's not required. And we've seen people achieve high levels even while eating a standard diet. Just additional considerations, it can have that slight appetite suppressing effect. And like I said, I recommend figuring out what timing works for you. These are just a couple of FAQs that we get typically. Side effects, really the only side effect that I tell people to caution is don't take a whole bunch all at once. That's where you'll see some of that GI distress. People ask about ketones for diabetes, and actually because ketones reduce liver glucose output, you can see more supported insulin mediation, but I do recommend, working with your practitioner. And then the only time people to avoid ketones is if you have kidney dysfunction, because that's where we might see that mild metabolic acidosis. So that's kind of the overview. Again, KenetikPro is available to both consumers and practitioners, but we do only sell through practitioner channels. So if you go to that KenetikPro site, you'll be able to find where you can purchase. And if you're a practitioner and have questions, feel free to reach out to our team. And that's me. All right. And I
Wow.
see a lot of questions, but we can dive in.
Holy cow, that was Courtney, that was amazing. And I have been a ton of and delivered a lot of discussions on ketone, biology, chemistry, as well as ketone bodies and whatnot. And you just did a beautiful, I mean, this was freaking fantastic no matter. So you were getting a lot of shout outs in the chats about that too, but excellent. I love this conversation. So it's now everyone else gets to jump in.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's a fun when people start to understand like the cellular biology. I think it just extends into everything else that we're doing for health.
What's interesting to me, Courtney, is you probably saw the study that came out, or not really study, the article that came out a week or two ago, showing that basically ketogenic diets cause cancer, and we're always getting things like that. And we broke it down in our community. We really dismantled that study and explained that there was nothing in that study showed that anybody actually was creating ketone bodies, right? Like that was what was really disturbing. So I love these conversations that keep coming up. You keep bringing the real science, but also there's so many people on this call right now, and myself included. You're talking about the bench, but we're living at the bedside, and we're seeing the application of this. And in our world, it's mostly cancer, but you spoke to all of the other metabolic health conditions. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. All right, well, let's dive into some of these questions because it looks like there's quite a few. Yeah, let's see. Those are Lynn.
A lot of conversation at the beginning, but there was one from Valerie asking about if your products have been used on dogs.
Interesting. I know you just had another webinar about metabolic health for pets. I can't say that our products specifically have been used on dogs to my knowledge. I do think, though, this whole evolution of our aging human conversation to aging animals is really important, and it's all the same cellular biology. So I would ask a science cellular oriented vet. But I do think that it probably is a helpful thing for your animal as well.
We'll connect
Yeah.
you with Dr. Lauren Nations from the Neoteric team, and maybe you two can talk about some of those clinical applications in our furry
Yeah,
friends.
yeah, that would be
I
awesome.
also think if Dr. Marlene Siegel is still here, she's like she's like a metabolic health expert in the pet world as well. So if
Mhm.
she's here and wants to speak up, I'd love her insights as well. But between her and Dr. Lauren Nations, you've got folks who have applied this clinically, but also Dr. Lauren was part of what was called Keto Pet, an entire Keto Pet sanctuary. It was all about using a ketogenic diet and therapeutic ketosis in animals with cancer,
Yeah,
specifically dogs on that particular trial. But yeah, it's pretty cool stuff, Courtney. So I think there's a lot to be offered here as well.
Yeah,
definitely.
Dr. Siegel, if you're here, just I guess raise your hand in the chat area or whatever, and I'll unmute you. I do have someone in the chat who asked, let's see, a couple things. Okay, what about children, especially on the spectrum?
Mm,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when we're looking at especially autism or ADHD, like these hyperactivity where the brain's ability to use that energy as fuel, right? To use that glucose may be impaired. And so working with a kid to help bring some of that inflammation down and to provide a secondary fuel source can be really helpful. Again, I can't, say use this in your child without having some medical oversight, but it definitely, we've seen it work really well with kids with autism, kids with ADHD.
I would love to add to that too, Courtney. I mean, my gosh, you talked about we started really using ketogenic diets and ketosis for athletes, but actually this began in the 1920s in the pediatric population
Right,
for
epilepsy.
epilepsy. So it is
Right.
long, I mean, over 100 years of safety and efficacy in this. And I want to highlight, you mentioned in your presentation, which was so stinking excellent, was this complex one issue. And experts like Dr. Richard Fry, who is 600 papers into publications in mitochondrial defects in autism, this is one of his workarounds because it's an issue at the complex one. And so, as you noted, this bypasses that complex one and helps create energy efficiency in these very very inflamed glial activated brains that you so beautifully pointed out. So this has huge utility. And then the taste is really important here. Like this is really key because a lot of the other ketone products on the market no kid will ever touch those. So yeah.
Right. I mean, that's really like when we say like we designed it for clinical applications, that was one of the things we had in mind, right? It's not if no one's going to physically drink the ketones, they're not going to have the
Yeah.
the therapeutic application. But no, thank you for calling that out. Of all the different therapies out there, honestly, ketones have been researched in kids longer than probably most things have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another question, why is it available only through a practitioner? So this is from Wynette. She's one of our advocates, and so she wants to know if she can get this as an advocate as well.
Yeah, so because this was designed for medical use, we only sell through practitioner channels. We do have our direct-to-consumer partners, Kinetic. The difference between the products is that ours is higher dose. So whereas that's going to be 12 grams in a can, ours is 80 grams in our can. And so we just recommend working with somebody really knowledgeable in metabolic health because it's a higher dose. But if you are an advocate and you've been trained by Dr. Winters, we do have some options for you as well. So just reach out to our email and I can help get you set up. But it's just to help keep, preserve the medical version of the product.
Dr. Nasha, do you have any thoughts in terms of what you see in terms of how practitioners and advocates could be using this product in their
Oh,
patient population?
well, we train our clinicians in our world that we use, we try to help people know that we want you to get there first with diet and lifestyle. And we use the ketones, exogenous ketones, as sort of a bridge to overcome that discomfort as you're making that change from being a predominant sugar burner into being more adaptive, metabolically flexible, and more of a fat burner. So it's it smooths the ride. But we also use the exogenous ketones in the cancer world to potentiate other therapies like hyperbaric oxygen, radiation therapy, certain chemotherapeutic interventions and to help people really ride comfortably through fasting, which we now use around our chemotherapy as well. So this is a tool in our oncology space. But as I saw other people mentioning here, like, can this be used for diabetes? I mean, the entire community of Virta Health, which is a massive platform right now, they're like the us of diabetes. They're definitely have utility in helping them be more successful in onboarding into a ketogenic lifestyle. So I think these are some really interesting conversations being had here. People, I see the light bulbs going off in the people going, can it be used for this? Can it be used for this? When you think about 93% of Americans are considered to be metabolically unhealthy, you recognize there's powerful utility here. And we're so quick to jump on things like GLPs, which have a lot of concerns and side effects and cost and, issues. But ketone bodies themselves are also GLP inhibitor, GLP-1s. And so this is a place where this might be a strategy that can also come on board or help somebody who's struggling in those same areas. Yeah.
Great. Another question. I gotta go back
Really
to
quick before I go on. Sorry, really quick. Courtney, it looked like you wanted to say something maybe about the GLP. I want you to say something if there's something ripe there for it to be said.
No, I just wanted to call out. I mean, I think obviously your group and the people that you're training and all of the team that's looking at metabolic health for cancer treatment, but I think people just sometimes lose the plot of sugar is fueling all of this chaos in our cells. And it's really why that whole being able to transition away from a sugar as your primary fuel source to something that's less inflammatory, that's kicking off less reactive oxygen species, is just fundamental to starving a cancer, right? Starving an inflammation. So I just appreciate that you're doing the work you're doing, because it's a story that just needs to be told.
And I saw here also that Andrea Schaefer noted about the GLUT1 deficiency. And I believe this even came to be in your organization because of one of your investors or co-founders who has a kiddo with this exact issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, part of the story of, as you mentioned, yeah, we have a team member who's got a daughter who's really lives off of exogenous ketones. Like, he has her biology so fine-tuned because of the GLUT1 and the other deficiencies that she has, and she is alive because of ketones. And so it's kind of crazy when you start to understand what it can do. And yeah, and Josh is great, and his daughter is incredible, and kind of him being able to tell the story from a personal level has been powerful.
Amazing. Thank you for that.
We got another question. How would you introduce this product to clients who look to keep their glucose low overnight?
Hmm.
I think it's a good, yeah. So we see a ton of the glucose modulation, right? When I go to these shows and we'll test glucose and ketones, and it's cool to see ketone levels rise as glucose drops. Um, I've gotten this mixed feedback, so I really can't say what the perfect protocol is, but some people do take a small dose before bed, and that puts it on board right before bed. I wouldn't do it, 20 minutes before bed, but probably an hour before bed. And then you can have some of that sustained ketones on board as you're going in overnight. I would caution that some people get a slight excitatory effect from it. So it's kind of, people have told me it helps them sleep, and people have told me it keeps them awake. So it really depends on your biology, and you have to test it out a little bit.
Yeah. Amazing.
Great. Okay, let me see here. For those of us already working with a knowledgeable practitioner and wanting to better self-advocate, what should we be looking at in our labs regarding kidney function? You mentioned kidney function in your presentation.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'm kind of looking at, and it's not directly kidney function, but there are other markers we can look at with kidney function, is I'm looking at those key inflammatory markers, like your highly sensitive C-reactive protein, your homocysteines, because I think those are going to be disruptive across the board. And then just looking at some of your standard, creatinine buns, things like that, to keep sure that your kidneys are functioning properly. So it's the two, just your typical kidney biomarkers paired with your inflammation biomarkers. I'm not an expert in that side of things, so I'd have to go to our clinical team, or maybe Dr. Winters. I don't know if you've had more to add to that.
No, I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it, because it's, because you can't, some people just naturally, their blood sugar should drop at night. And if you're in a deeper fasted state, maybe if someone is trying to maintain lower levels, perhaps they switch their eating window from morning to early afternoon, and then be in a deeper fasted state so that they maintain lower levels all throughout the night. That would be a strategy clinically to use. And if you want to do that little bump of ketones, you're welcome to, but it can, if you go too low in blood sugar, you can also spike your cortisol, which will then spike your blood sugar. So I think what we're doing an N of one with a clinician trained in this is going to be important. I think the big picture that Courtney offered is very spot on. Yeah.
Okay, let me see here.
I'll answer, Lynn, the one that just came in
Okay.
from Eddie, because
Great.
we're doing all this testing at these different conferences we attend. So we'll typically tell people we'll do a baseline BHB level. We'll give them 20 grams of KenetikPro, and then tell them to come back in an hour, and we'll retest them. And we'll see, again, depending on what they ate, depending on the time of day, but we'll see people jump up to a therapeutic or nutritional ketosis level, usually within 60 to 75 minutes. And that's about when they'll peak. And then the longer tail can last for 2 to 3 hours, if sometimes longer, again, depending on that person's baseline, what they're in. So you'll see it pretty quick, which is one of the nice things about using these, especially if you're using them in a more acute way, like you're gonna, like I'm going to give a big talk and have some ketones on board to keep me focused, or post exercise, post marathon, something where you've really depleted your mitochondrial function, then you can put those on board to help with that recovery.
Love it.
Wonderful. I'm going to be on your ketones. I need some right now, actually. I actually
Lynn
need
does.
Always got it.
conference planning is exhausting. That's what I'll say.
You're
Um,
rocking it, though.
Kimberly asked a question, is there a discount code that they could use to try the product? And so do you want to talk a little bit about, I guess it's probably, again, if it's available through practitioners, do you want to talk a little bit about your practitioner relationships and how that works?
Yeah, so practitioners, we offer different kind of the standard suite of options for them to sell to their clients. We can do a wholesale model, we can do a drop ship, and then we can get them set up as an affiliate as well. And practitioner doesn't have to be a doctor. Again, we're keeping this clinical, meaning we want people who understand the cellular medicine side. So if you have training, if you have, if you're a health coach, things of that nature, you're totally qualified to be an affiliate or to wholesale this. And then for the patients, you just have to buy through a practitioner channel. And there's a list on our website of all the different practitioners that are offering it.
Great. Great. And then Eddie's asking if you ship to Canada.
We do ship to Canada, yes.
Oh, perfect.
I can't always guarantee that it's not going to have any issues, but
Yeah.
we do ship it.
Yeah. Where are you currently shipping? Because again, we have people from kind of all over the globe that are a part of our community. And so while it may not be relevant to this, the people who are live here with us now, I know we have several people who will be watching the replay.
Yeah.
So we have the capability to ship nation or globally. I will say just from our experience, different countries have easier or harder times. We can get to the UK pretty easily. Canada is usually pretty easy. Europe will get it there, but it will sometimes get held up for a while. So if you ever in the States, then we can just send you a bunch to bring back.
We will. We'll have a few folks coming in from all over the globe for our event next week. So hopefully they'll come and introduce themselves to you and take a whole bunch back.
Yeah, for sure. Arena just commented, I think this could be very useful for clients who have a melatonin receptor genotype in their glucose and insulin pathway.
Yeah. Yeah. And the switch circadian, it can really help smooth that ride as well. And I know we're almost out of time here, but I wanted to point out there was a question that came in through that was very medical specific to utilizing if this person asked very specifically, blah, 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 let's see here, whether being in permanent state of ketosis is recommended for someone who's undergone a total hysterectomy for an endometrial cancer. And so I mentioned this is more in general because they're asking about endometrial, but typically when we're using this in the cancer space, you want a continuous flow of ketones. Like that is what the studies show. Please do not cycle in this environment. You will actually make things worse. So it is very important that you work with somebody who's been trained in metabolic medicine, metabolic oncology to help smooth that ride. But let me just say this specifically, folks like Dr. Goncalves out of Cornell, brilliant. His whole entire specialty is endometrial cancer. He has shown that ketone bodies are more effective than all the conventional chemotherapies offered to this particular cancer type. And so for the love of God, we've got the good research there. But he's also shown that if you are taking a chemo, especially some of the PIK3CA inhibiting drugs, this will potentiate that effect because those drugs typically, ironically, cause more metabolic derangement, more insulin issues, which is ridiculous. So you have to be in deep therapeutic ketosis to actually take those drugs without making your cancer worse. So I love this question, but I thought we better hit that one live. And this is, something that I think anyone here dealing with a cancering process may want to be aware that you don't cycle ketones here. And yet here's another tool coming on board that can help keep that ride smooth. So if you do have things like poor night's sleep or how to take steroids for some reason, or you're under a lot of stress and your ketones aren't where you'd like them to be, little bumps of this exogenous support can really help give that extra therapeutic value.
Do you know, Dr. Winters, of anyone? I mean, I know that inside of the research world right now, people are working on continuous ketone monitors and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything yet come out that's been up to snuff?
That's a good question. We've had a few hit the market and then quickly go away because they were failing. But I do know, and we're hoping we can make some announcements at our event next week, that there are some things on the horizon. So let's hope the hope for this, because this is going to be a real game changer in helping us know where people are at all times of the day. It's just like our HRV devices, our CGMs. This could be another really powerful tool, especially when you're really looking for a clinical ketone body, process. Thank you for a good question.
Yeah, Courtney, do you want to talk a little bit about, for those people that are joining us at Metabolic Health Day conference next week, a little bit about what you're going to be doing at your booth, and then for our community members, what you'll be offering to them as well. I'm assuming we'll get to sample your delicious products. So
Yeah, so swing by. We'll be at the community day on that day before, and then also at the community day, well, throughout the event, but then we'll have a couple extra things on the community day. But we, like I was mentioning, we'll have a whole setup to test ketones. So we'll have sample products there. We have 3 different flavors, so you can choose, which one you want. And all it is just come swing by, sign a quick consent form, and then we'll do your baseline ketone levels, give you some sample product, and then test you again. And we always have fun with it because people will be like, okay, well, then I'm going to come back in another hour, or I'm going to go eat this. And so it's kind of this little experimentation throughout the whole weekend.
well,
Fun.
we do love
Labs, living laboratories is what we all get to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And
We
what's so
do
cool,
love that.
Courtney, is you have so many other friends. We've got, other ketone companies that are like putting ketones in coffee, and you've got good friends and relationships there. You've got other testing companies. We've got a CGM company coming on board. Like, we've got some interesting people that all of our vendors we're bringing on are all about metabolic health and helping you be a consumer or a clinician to be successful in utilizing and changing metabolic health for yourself, for your patients, and for humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Yeah, you got to be your own advocate, and the more you understand and the more empowered you are with the tools and the products, then the better off you are. So,
No doubt.
Right on.
And then Francis had a question. How about appendiceal cancer recurrence?
Doesn't matter. All the
No,
same thing. So we
all the
keep looking
same.
at, we keep trying to think that our tumors showing up in different places are different. They're not. 70 to 90% of all cancers are very glycolytic in nature, but all cancers need to be carb restricted. They all do, because they will all utilize ketones and, glucose and insulin as fuel sources. So we need to be carb restricting 100% of the time in all cancers, in my opinion, and from what the research shows. The level of which you need to be in ketosis may differ from cancer type, depending, but there's a lot of experts that we've trained who will help you determine how deep you need to go. But appendiceal cancers, pancreatic cancers, colon cancers, brain cancers, certain breast cancers, these are very, very glycolytic cancers, and they need to be in a more continuous, deeper state of ketosis for best impact, so that it helps also make other therapies work better.
Yeah, great. I mean, if you're looking for a practitioner advocate that's been trained by Dr. Nasha, if you're looking for someone to work with that can help you navigate this process, visit my.terrain.network. Our network of practitioners and advocates are in there. I would say most, if not all of them, practice remotely. So you don't necessarily need someone who's an expert in a specific cancer, an expert that lives nearby. You can just take a look and see which one resonates best with you, and choose and reach out to them to see, if they're taking on new patients. And then someone mentioned, obviously liquid ketones are better than capsules.
it's going to be more quickly available, but
I've never personally seen a ketone capsule really work. I think it's got to be something that really is taken up in the mouth, and then they've got, like, the capsule, you have to break that down and then the process of it.
right.
But yeah,
And I don't think you're going to get that much in a capsule,
Yeah.
right? You would have to take a lot of capsules to get the equivalent dosage of what you can take in a liquid form.
Great.
Awesome. Yeah.
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 And Valerie wants to talk to both of you regarding something. So I will chat with both of you. Valerie, I will respond to you separately. And then I think that's all that we have. Nasha, you took care of some of those questions in the chat. Courtney, anything else that you'd like to add about, what you guys are doing?
No, I mean, I really appreciate the opportunity to come share a little bit about ketones. I guess my last plug is, like I said at the beginning, Longevity Launch Labs is our company, and we actually are focused on cellular medicine through our products and technologies. And so KenetikPro is one of our core products, but I'm happy to always chat all things cellular metabolism, cell bio, because it's kind of, again, if you understand what's happening beneath the hood, you can fix a lot of problems.
Oh my, music to my ears, Courtney. That's why we are so
Yes,
excited.
that's why I love what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
So thank you so
ditto,
much.
ditto. We are super excited to have you join us in the desert next week. If any of you have not gotten your tickets for in person, we still have a few opportunities to do that. But this does not negate the fact that you could still show up virtually, and even purchasing virtually, even if you can't be there in the real time. All of this is being recorded, you guys, all of it. So you can come back to this again and again and again. You can have watch parties, you can watch elements of it and come back to it. So please join us. This is a movement, not just a conference. And so really grateful for partners like KenetikPro, like Longevity Labs, like Courtney and her amazing team, bringing really good solutions to a lot of complex problems.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having us. I'll see you
Thank
both
you
next
everyone
week.
for joining us. And we've got another webinar this afternoon and one this evening. So hopefully we'll see some of you there as well. Again, thank you. We don't see you in Tucson. I hope we'll see you online virtually. Courtney, want to thank you, and Longevity Launch Labs and KenetikPro for your help and support of this event in our community. And again, looking forward to meeting you in person in Tucson.
Yeah, definitely. I'll see you guys next week.
Thank
All
you.
right, safe travels. Take care,
All
everyone.
right. Bye.
Bye-bye.